Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions opened up day 3 of the NFL Draft at pick 177 with a surprise selection of James Mitchell, the tight end from Virginia Tech. James Mitchell was, I would say, the surprise of the draft for a lot of Detroit Lions fans. Many of them didn't expect tight end to be addressed extremely early. Many of them didn't believe tight end was necessarily the biggest need after the emergence of Brock Wright about halfway or midway through the 2021 NFL season. But the Detroit Lions felt like it was a need, and it was a need worth addressing in the 5th round of this draft. So they spent a 5th round selection on the tight end from Virginia Tech, and today we're going to take a look at this player. We're going to take a look at his strengths and weaknesses, where he fits with the Detroit Lions, and why the Detroit Lions chose to draft a tight end that was very much not talked about this draft season, opposed to maybe a Connor Hayward, who was a little bit more versatile, or maybe even a couple other guys that were more talked about and more hyped up going into the 2022 NFL Draft. But with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's take a look at James Mitchell, the tight end from Virginia Tech. Now, James Mitchell is a tight end that stands at 6'4", 249 pounds, and has 33-inch arms. Unfortunately, he was unable to perform at the 2022 NFL Combine, as his season-ending knee injury did keep him from performing there, which is a little bit of a bummer, right? It does kind of suck that we didn't get to see an official 40 or an official 3-cone, right? It stinks that we haven't really got to see him run on his knee since the injury took place, but just like Jameson Williams, he is expected to make a full recovery, and just like Jameson Williams, he is fully expected to be back to 100%, likely by training camp, since that's where Jameson Williams wants to be. And at the end of the day, he got hurt far earlier than Jameson Williams, so even if it took him an extra 2 months, he should still be almost 100% by the start of training camp, and certainly by the start of the 2022 NFL season. Now, James Mitchell throughout his college football career had some pretty good statistics, putting up in 22 games over 52 receptions, 838 yards, averaging 16.1 yards per reception, and having 7 receiving touchdowns. He was one of the most consistent weapons for Virginia Tech over his 3 years, and he actually added 5 rushing touchdowns on 7 rushing attempts to his stat sheet as well. So he actually finished college with 59 touches for just under 850 yards and 12 touchdowns, which at the end of the day isn't very bad. I mean, that's some pretty good statistics for somebody that's going late in the 5th round. Now, James Mitchell uses his combination of athleticism and his speed to really create some good separation from defensive backs and find some gaps in between zone defenses and run away from guys. And man, he is really good at separating on routes, and he uses that separation, that athleticism, and his strong hands to be one of the more consistent receiving weapons on the football field every single weekend for Virginia Tech. Now, getting on to his pros, of course, I already talked about his athleticism. Yes, James Mitchell was unable to perform at the NFL Combine. He was unable to run a 40, he was unable to jump a vert, and he was unable to jump for a broad jump. However, James Mitchell is very clearly on tape one of the more athletic tight ends in this draft class. Again, standing at 6'4", I wouldn't be shocked if this guy ran a 4.5, a high 4.5, or a low 4.6, because he was simply running away from guys. He was, very simply outrunning defensive backs to the end zone, and just showed that he has a top gear of speed that allows him to get away, that allows him to break away for some big plays, both through the air and on the ground. He is a really, really tough football player, welcomes contact, is extremely, extremely physical, and you see that in his hands, but also in his rushing ability, right? As a tight end, you don't typically get end arounds. You don't typically get sweeps. You don't typically get, those quick tap passes that the quarterback just barely touches, taps it right into your, puts it right into your chest, and you kind of have it as an end around or a sweep, and you go in for a rushing touchdown, right? You don't get handoffs as a tight end and expect to get rushing touchdowns unless you're like Travis Kelce, who has experience playing quarterback and kind of has some of that experience running the football from under center or out of the shotgun. But James Mitchell can certainly do that. He can be a versatile weapon. He can be a weapon that moves in motion. He can be a guy that on 3rd and 1 gets an end around. On a 3rd and 1, gets that touch pass that just, maybe picks up 2 to 3 yards, but picks up that first down. He can be somebody that on a motion can get the football and pick up a first down or a touchdown in the red zone. It adds a different kind of versatility to your offense because James Mitchell can be a red zone threat through the air. He can be a red zone threat on the ground, and he's just a really, really good catcher of the football. He is somebody that just has really strong hands and is not afraid to catch through contact, is not afraid to catch through traffic. And I would say when the catches are the most difficult, that's where he thrives. I mean, you go back and you watch some of his highlights from when he was playing. He's catching touchdowns from the Virginia Tech quarterback in triple coverage. I mean, he had to fit the ball between 3 guys, and James Mitchell still came away with the ball. I mean, there were hits where he was catching the ball right as he was being hit in the back, and he made just the most improbable catches with his strong hands and his physicality. And I think that is why the Detroit Lions wanted this guy. He is somebody that is physical, somebody that works incredibly hard, and somebody that is genuinely a very good receiving option for Jared Goff, somebody that can create separation, which is what we know Jared Goff likes to throw to. He's not very comfortable throwing in those tight windows, so giving him a tight end that can create separation better than Brock Wright gives him another weapon that he can get the football to. On top of that, you give Jared Goff a big frame. You give him strong hands at the tight end position, and all of a sudden, it's looking like a really, really enticing weapon for Jared Goff to utilize a lot this season, both in the red zone and on crucial pickups for 3rd down and even 4th down, as we know the Detroit Lions like to be aggressive on those 4th downs. Now, on top of that, I think just his combination of size and speed lets him get to the football easier than a lot of people, right? He does create that separation, but even on those contested balls, even on those tight throws, he comes away with the football probably 60% of the time, right? Where we talk about Calvin Johnson, right? It's not a 50-50 ball, it's an 80-20 ball, right? With him, it's like a 60-40 ball a majority of the time, where if he gets his hands on the football, he's going to catch it 60 to 70% of the time. It's not really a 50-50 ball with him because he uses his size, he uses his strong hands, and he uses his power to just simply outmuscle people to the football. And if you need a big time catch, right? If you don't have a really good option, you just got to throw it to James Mitchell and make sure it gets anywhere near his hands, and 9 times out of 10, he is going to catch the football. And if you need a big red zone threat, he is that guy because, again, those strong hands give you a really good percentage when you throw to him in the red zone that he is going to come down with the reception. And at the end of the day, he brings a lot of effort to the field. He may not be the greatest blocker, he may not be, great at everything, but his effort and willingness to learn and get better is something that also pops off on tape, and especially the effort in the run game is something that is very, very apparent. Now, getting on to one of his big weaknesses, he is not a super good run blocker. I mean, you could do a lot worse than run blockers than James Mitchell, right? There were worse run blockers in this year's draft. There are worse run blockers in the NFL right now at tight end than James Mitchell, but I wouldn't consider it a strength of his game. He just isn't very comfortable with it yet, right? His hand placement isn't always right. His, leverage isn't always correct. He's not always able to drive people down the field on run blocking, or he isn't necessarily always able to, necessarily do what he needs to do as a run blocker when it is a run play, but the effort is certainly there. He always gets in the way. He always at least disrupts and moves somebody on a running play. And even though he might not be a devastating blocker like TJ Hawkinson, although he might not be blocking defensive ends down the field, or he might not, be blocking linebackers super well on run plays, he certainly tries and gives the effort to at least get in the way and at least make that linebacker go around him, at least slow that linebacker down for 2 to 3 steps, which at the end of the day is better than what you're getting out of some other players, right? That's better than what you're getting out of certain other tight ends throughout the NFL. Some guys just absolutely refuse to block in the NFL. And at the very least, I'm going to give it to James Mitchell that he brings the effort when it comes to run blocking. And if you're a football team seeing that, I'm going to say, okay, do I want somebody that has the technique to run block but doesn't have the effort? Or do I want somebody that has the effort and wants to be an impact player every single play? Do I want somebody that's going to give me that effort on the run blocking and I can teach him where to put his hands? I can teach him how to create better leverage. I can teach him how to drive people down the field. I can teach him all the fundamentals of being a good run blocker, but you can't teach the effort of being a run blocker when the ball's not going your way. And James Mitchell has the most important aspect of that, being the effort that he gives and the effort that he shows. Now, overall, I think James Mitchell is a very good prospect. I think James Mitchell is a developmental tight end that could become a playmaker and a role player in the Detroit Lions offense as early as next season. Again, he's a very good pass catcher. He's a very willing run blocker. He's a very good athlete. At the end of the day, he does not shy away from contact. He does not shy away from the football. And I think you could see him be that security blanket, that safety blanket that Jared Goff uses, especially in red zone or third and fourth down opportunities. If James Mitchell, you told me, came away with 5 touchdowns next season and picked up 10 to 15 first downs for the Detroit Lions on crucial have-to-have-it downs, I wouldn't be surprised because I think that's the role he's going to carve. I think he's going to be a very good tight end too. I think he's going to see a significant amount of snaps side by side with TJ Hockenson, and I think he's going to get a fair amount of targets and a fair amount of production for a 5th round product. Now, at the end of the day, the Detroit Lions tight ends saw a lot of snaps a season ago. TJ Hockenson saw a lot, obviously, as the tight end 1, but Brock Wright last year as the tight end 2 saw over 301 snaps, and Darren Fells, when he was the tight end, saw over 150 snaps. So, if you're talking about a legit tight end 2 player, you're talking about somebody that will likely see somewhere between 350 to 400 snaps as a tight end, which is a decent amount. That's about, I would say, a third of the snaps the Detroit Lions are going to take next season on the offensive side of the ball, and that still leaves Brock Wright taking probably about 200 snaps as a tight end 3, and if one of your tight ends goes down, I think all 3 of them can step up and be starting quality for the Detroit Lions. Right, we know how good that TJ Hockenson is when he is healthy, and we even saw last year Brock Wright step up and be a really good tight end 1 when we absolutely needed him to do so, but now this pick adds depth to the tight end position. It adds a much better receiving threat than what Brock Wright gives you. It gives you a little bit more of a receiving threat, a little bit more of a vertical aspect. It gives you a little bit more of that down the field threat that Brock Wright simply doesn't bring. And I think Brock Wright will still have a role, but I think James Mitchell completes this tight end group. I think we now have 3 tight ends that can do everything you want them to do. 3 tight ends that can both be effective, at least in the receiving game, and can at least affect a running play each and every time they don't get the football. I think they have 2 really good pass catchers, and I think they have 2 really good run blockers. Obviously, TJ Hockenson fitting in one of both of those spots, as he can do both extremely well. But I think now they have a really complete tight end room. They have receivers, they have run blockers, and they have guys that can do everything with no clear weakness that would keep them off the field if they were asked to step up and do so. So with that being the case, I give this overall pick a B. Why a B? Because he's going to be a backup, because it was a good value pick, right? He was projected to go right around the 5th round, and that's where the Detroit Lions ended up grabbing him. I think he's going to be impactful. I think he's going to be very much like the Brock Wright of last year, and I think that, if you're drafting a quality backup or a quality role player on day 3, you did exactly what you needed to do, but you're not necessarily blowing anybody out of the water with this pick. So overall, I give the pick a B, as I think he will be a solid rotational player, and I think he will definitely carve out a role as a playmaker in the Lions offense. But with all that being said, that is life for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about the pick down in the comments below. I'd be very curious what you guys think. But with all of that being said, that is life for you guys today. Thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!